Hello everyone, we are going to do a new project where we are going to play around with color grading. But first, let's do a little bit of housekeeping. I've noticed some of you are not properly organizing your files, so I want you to make sure that you have a folder. In this case, I called mine color grade, but you should have a folder that you have saved your files into. All of you should have a 4A or 7B folder on your desktop, and in that folder you should have today's date, and in that folder you should have your video files. And this is so that we can keep all of our stuff organized. You know exactly where your files are, because if you open your 7B or 4A folder, you can see all the dates where we started projects, and then that's where you'll find your work. Leaving things in the downloads folder is just not going to work, clutter the computer, and otherwise lead to the fabled Mr. Wheeler, I can't find my work problem. So you have got your files organized. You go to File, New, and Event. So typically when you create a new event, it gives you the date as the event's name. Like you can see over here on the left-hand side of my screen, I have the different dates for various projects I've started. I decided to make my event named Video Lessons because I'm going to try to organize my video lessons into one place. But for you, you should have yours labeled as the date, and you should have your frame rate at 23.98, 720p HD, all these things. Oh, and creates a new project over here. So I've created a new project, so I'm going to scroll down to video lessons. And you can see over here, there's no files in here, and this is called Untitled Project. Some of you are also leaving your project as untitled, and you really shouldn't do that. What is Untitled Project? Your projects should have names, just like all the songs you listen to and the books you read and the movies you watch all have names. So your projects, like your essays, should also have names. I'm going to call mine Color Grading 1. And I'm going to have a couple of these videos, but this is the first one. We're just doing a basic color grading assignments today, so I'm going to call this color grading 1, and we'll see, of course, color grading 2 and possibly color grading 3. So I've got my video lessons event, so I'm going to click on this event so I know that this is the right place. I'm going to click on import files, and I've got my files selected here, and make sure that you leave the files in place, and in this case make sure that you have the analyze video for balance color, have that unchecked because we are going to do it ourselves. I want to teach you how to do this correctly. Import all, and now I have my two files, and I'm going to pull these down into my editing area, and these still need to be edited, and I really shouldn't need to tell you how to edit at this point. So let's just say you need to have your video edited such that this woman comes in, she pours this guy a cup of coffee, and then we are going to cut to him looking up as she walks away. You see over there, as she walks away, he looks up and goes back to his paper. So we're just going to use this little section at the end and her walking up and pouring the coffee. So I'm going to edit that down, and then we can start talking about color grading basics. Okay, so now I have my video edited, and it is a very short 20-second video where you can see the waitress in the background going around serving people coffee. She comes up to our main character over here, and she serves him coffee, and then after she finishes serving him coffee, you'll see that she walks away and then he looks up to follow her. And that's really it. Now, the reason I'm using this scene is what you will notice is that there's something off about the way it looks. There's just this white haze across the screen, and this is called being a bit flat. So what we are going to do is we are going to play around with our color grading to make this look much better. And that's what we're going to do for this assignment. So the video editing part, super simple. The color grading part, a little bit less simple. So the first thing we need to do is get our view set up right. So I do not need anything on the left hand side of the screen here, so I'm going to open up my view window a little bit more by turning that off. I'm also going to bring my play area down as well, because I really don't need to see that much. I'm not doing any editing from here. So I'm going to bring this all the way down and make my view much bigger. Now what I need to do is bring up my color viewer. And you can get to your color viewer by pressing Command 7. And there you see, this is it over here, Command 7. In the color viewer, if you click on this little icon over here, what we want to look at is the waveform. So when you opened this up, you might have not seen the image that I have on the left here. You might have seen something that looks like this, the RGB color parade, and we'll talk more about that a little bit later. And we are looking at the waveform of luma. Luma meaning we are looking at the light, because if we look at this video, there's clearly too much light in here, so we need to play around with the light. You will also see on the left-hand side of the screen here that there is this scale. And all you need to know about the scale is that 0 is black and 100 is pure white. And as you can see in this video, our blacks are hovering around 24 and our whites are hovering around 70. And we need a broader dynamic range on our color and our light. So that's what we're going to do today. We're going to fix this. So I've got my video clip selected. You can see at the bottom of my screen here, I clicked on it and it has a yellow box around it. So now what I'm going to do is click on the color inspector, which brings up this. And just based on what we can see here, that there's not much black and not much white, there's something wrong with the exposure. And we have 4 different dials you can use. The one on the left is the master, which controls all of them at the same time, which we don't want to do. And if you move these around and you don't really remember where it was, if you just double click on this, it goes back to the default setting. We also have shadows, which is this dot over here. Shadows is going to be all your darks. We have highlights on the right hand side, that's going to be all your whites. And then your midtones, which is going to be everything in between. The reason why we even have this inspector open on the left hand side here is I want to bring my shadows down. So you can see as I pull this down and I'm getting closer and closer to 0, I don't want to go past 0 because then it gets too dark and I have blacks that sort of just blur into each other. I want to bring this down. Now look at what a difference just that makes. If we bring this back to our original, it's just so flat. But when I bring my shadows down to 0, now we're starting to see a little bit more color in his jacket and his face. I also want to bring my whites up a bit more. I know this is a bright scene, but it is daylight and there is light shining from this window directly onto the sky. So the scene is supposed to be bright. So I'm going to pull up my highlights all the way up so I can get close to, but not above, close to about 100. But now you see as I pulled the whites up, my blacks pulled away from 0, so I'm going to pull this back down again, and now I can balance this out with my midtones and move this around as needed. I don't want to move it too high because as you can see I'm pulling my blacks away again, but I do want to have a good light on my midtones, so I'll just pull my black down again. I think maybe I just need to pull this midtones down rather than up. There you go. So you can see I'm now getting a much better color on this guy. And if you're wondering like, okay, this all looks normal, look, I'm going to turn this off and we can see how different what I've done is. That is a huge difference now that you pay attention to it. So here there's this flatness to the image, and now I actually see some color. So I need to do it again on this side so you can see my color vector is across the board here. I'm going to move this one over, click on that second clip, and then again, taking a look at my inspector here, I got my waveform, I'm looking at Luma, and I just bring my shadows down. I bring my whites up, and then I think I just need to bring my midtones down too. And there we go. And now we can get a good view of this guy's skin color and his face and his jacket. You can actually even see the texture on his jacket now, where you couldn't really see it before. And now when we look at this now looks like it has some color, it has some life, and it looks good. And this is something that you can use anytime you are trying to edit your video and you notice, man, there's something wrong with my video. It seems too bright or too white or maybe even too dark. This has to do with either under or overexposing your image. We have the camera set up where that shouldn't be an issue, but it could be an issue. So I've got my color balanced. Now I can go into saturation. Now saturation means how saturated, how influential, how bright the colors are. Like for example, let's get a close-up on his face here. So if I pull my saturation all the way up, his skin color goes from peachish color to more of like an orange color. You can also see the leaves in the background have gone from like a normal green to a very bright green. And that doesn't make any sense. Of course, if you want to completely remove your saturation and pull it all the way down, now you have desaturated the image completely, and now it's just gone black and white. So if you wanted to do something black and white, you can just desaturate everything, and then you have your black and white. Or if you want to overexpose your colors, which some movies do if you pay attention to them, you can bring this up a bit. So I'm going to play around with this a bit more, maybe bring my shadows a little bit down, but I also want to bring my midtones up, because midtones are going to be like, if you look on his forehead over here, this is the highlights. This is where the light is hitting him. Whereas on this side of his head, this is where the shadows are. And then the front of his face are where we're going to see these midtones. So I'm bringing the midtones up so I can give him more of a rich color in his face. Maybe bring the whiteness down a little bit so there isn't as much of a glare on his forehead. And that's really all we have to do. This is a pretty straightforward project. It's just a matter of paying attention to how we fiddle around with these exposures and saturations to get the best looking video we can. And this is really helpful for your videos, because when you are making your videos, depending if you're not really paying attention to the light, you might find that your video is too bright or too dark. And if that is the case, this is a skill that you can implement that will help you to fix any problems that you might have encountered in the filming process.